So there's a new dystopian romance release that is making the rounds and getting a lot of buzz, and that is Silver Elite by Dani Francis. I'm going to take you on a reading vlog while I read the book and give you my first impressions and final thoughts on whether I think it's worth it for you to read it as well. So come and join me for it. I'm gonna go make some coffee and then I'm gonna tell you my first impressions on Silver Elite by Dani Francis. I'm about 20% in. But first, I need to wake up. Okay, so I have some thoughts. First of all, the reason why I decided to pick this book up is because of all the discussion that's going around online. It's getting a lot of traction, but also not just because of the book, but also because everyone's trying to figure out who the author is, which I fully disagree with that whole discourse and everyone trying to figure out who's behind a pen name, because I think that authors historically, especially in romance, have wanted to have pen names, some of them because they have to. So if someone has gone to great lengths to make sure that their identity stays private, I'm just gonna respect that and just leave it at that. I've also seen a lot of discourse on whether the way that this book is being marketed just keeps digging into the fact that romantasy, and obviously this is not a romantasy, it's a dystopian romance, but the whole genre usually gets seen as less intellectual and like it's less than. So just for that alone, I wanted to pick it up and see what it was all about. I ended up getting this on audio from Everend, so I listened to 20% of it last night. First impressions is that it's a very easy read. So I blew through that 20%. It's very easy to follow the story. However, I think it's also a bit bland in terms of world building and character development so far. So 20% in, I feel like what I've gotten so far probably could have just been done in 10% of the book. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more about the world building so far, like what happened, how are we here, because we're just thrown into this dystopian post-apocalyptic story and we don't really get to know a lot about the world and the powers and how everything works, what happened before, how did we get here, who are the main players. And I think a lot of that is because we are obviously in the mind of our heroine and maybe she doesn't know all those answers yet, which I am totally fine with, but I feel like we just gave 20% of the book to that and I don't think we advanced enough in our knowledge of what's happening. So I would have loved to gotten to where we are right now much faster. That being said, this story is likable enough so far. It's, like I said, very easy to digest and very easy to get through, but it does rely on some big cliche tropes, especially if you were reading in the 2000s and 2010s. I think it does feel very much like that vibe of story, and we had some amazing stories back then, so I think this one is one of those that falls in the cliche of that time. Another thing that it does have is something that I may not necessarily always like, and it's the I'm not like other girls. So obviously our heroine has a very distinct power, and even her uncle who was raising her was kind of scared, not of her, but for her because of how vast her power was. I definitely think that our heroine has no clue what's in store for her as far as how much her powers will do, which I think it's interesting and it's exciting. I am hoping that the story picks up a little bit. As far as the romance, it is being set up, again, a bit cliche so far. So our two main characters that are going to be the love interest, I imagine, they met before they figure out that they were enemies, but it's pretty much the classic setup. So I would say 20% in, I'm definitely still enjoying it enough to continue reading it, but definitely more cliche than I was expecting and less solid world building as well that I was expecting. But I will check in once I read a little bit more and keep you guys updated on my progress. Okay, so quick reading break. I got some mail and I wanted to share that with you. I got the Edam Lip Softening Lip Balm that is going super viral. Everyone loves it. I got the one that is just the butter mochi, so it doesn't really have color to it, but they do have it in different colors, which they do look really pretty. If I do like it, I'm going to get a couple more, but so far it feels really nice and it's not sticky, which is my biggest pet peeve with a lot of these things. So we'll see how that goes throughout the day. I'll keep you guys updated on that. And I also got some surprise book mail from Avon. So I had actually seen this book when I was adding it to the release calendar. This is An Unladylike Secret by Amita Murray, and it is actually blurbed on the cover by Julia Quinn. So it says, sizzling romance with a splash of intrigue. So it sounds really interesting, but I'm probably not going to go into this one immediately because it does say it's the suspenseful final installment in the Marley Sisters series. So I feel like I probably should start from the beginning. Let me know if you guys have read this series. It says it's basically historical fiction / historical romance with suspense. So if you've read any of the series, let me know in the comments what you thought of it. But I think that it sounds really fun. I actually really love the cover on this one, and I'm a sucker for anything that is historical and mystery. So if this is a great historical mystery series, I am definitely going to be diving into that as well. I'm excited actually to read this coming week an arc that I have for Death at a Highland Wedding by Kelly Armstrong, which is part of A Rip Through Time, which I really, really love that series, and she has that one coming out at the end of May, I think May 20th. So if you haven't started that series, I definitely highly recommend. But that was my little break and update though. I'm going to go back to listening to Silver Elite by Dani Francis, and I'll get back and let you guys know what I think. Okay, so I read a little bit more, and what actually stands out is the fact that our heroine is really looking for a connection, and I think that some of what I was missing before is starting to really come through, and the fact that yes, she is aware that there's many things about the world that she doesn't know, but also I really enjoy the fact that we are seeing her looking for connection and feeling some of that emotional emptiness. So a little bit better is starting to pick up, but now it's time for breakfast. I actually just figured it out. I think what this book reminds me of is Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. It has a lot of the dynamics between Dimitri and Rose. It does have the academy setting. Her personality is a lot like Rose, and the hero's personality is slightly like Dimitri, a little bit less stoic, but still many things about their interactions feel very much like that dynamic. So I think for sure if you enjoyed Vampire Academy, then you'll probably like this one. It still remains to be said how it develops, but the comparison just popped into my head and I just had to tell you guys. It's another day and I didn't get that much reading done yesterday, so I'm gonna try and finish the book today. I still don't have any new thoughts to give you, so I'll check back in after I have my breakfast. So I'm gonna go do that, make some coffee, and get some reading done. Also, I really love these pants. I bought them in pretty much every color now. Okay, so here's my update at 70%. One of the things that I've heard a lot online is how this is just very steamy and adding a lot of like spicy scenes, and how that should not be in dystopia and all of this conversation. And actually being 70% in, I feel like there hasn't been a ton. So I would probably say this is about like average to low steam. Also, it's not as graphic, I guess, as I was expecting. It still is, but I think a little bit less than I was expecting. So I think that some of that conversation doesn't really feel like the people actually got to reading the whole book. It's still a steamy book so far, so if that's what you're looking for, it is still there. But yeah, that's as far as that goes. I do think that you can tell that there is something more in the hero Cross and his relationship with the heroine, so I am looking forward to seeing some of that. Obviously, I think that you'll probably have a good guess as soon as this starts out on what that connection could possibly be, and I'm assuming that either that comes to light before the end of this book or in the next one, and it's something that develops more throughout the series, or maybe I'm just wrong. But since I don't want to spoil that for you guys, we'll leave that aside. But in terms of action and plot and all of those things, it's just a pretty average book. It's good. It's got enough interesting things happening so that you're looking forward to keep reading. I would say that still I consider that this could be shorter, in the sense that some of those scenes and some of the things that are happening could be a little bit tightened up and make this a shorter book all around, and I think that would make it a stronger pace. So it is a little bit slow paced. And one last observation that I have so far is also the fact that her uncle had kept her in the dark for all of her life, and I still cannot understand why that is when he knew how powerful she was and all of these things. So it feels a little bit strange that she was kept a little bit in the dark, and there's many things that she is not aware of, whether it's about her abilities but also about the larger world, the organization that her uncle was affiliated, and all of these things. So I think there's so many things that the heroine doesn't know, and I still don't understand why she was kept away. I would imagine that her uncle would have seen a lot of benefits in training her better and getting her a little bit more involved and in the know. So that part to me still doesn't make sense. Another thing that I do like is the fact that we're not doing a bunch of info dumping in this book, but I also feel like I cannot tell if the author has a very good grasp on every aspect of her world yet. I love it when an author can just write something and you'll immediately notice that they have such a good grasp on what the world is all about, and that you really have no other choice that to just go along, and it flows so nicely. So I think that is another thing that I probably can tell that it's not as tight. And I have to wonder if this author has written in this genre before or not. But so far, that's my thoughts. 70% in. Time for lunch now, and then I'll finish reading. It is raining outside, so it's the perfect day for getting a little bit more reading done while just also relaxing. I'll update you in a little bit. Now it's a new day again, and I'm going to give you my final thoughts. I finished reading Silver Elite by Dani Francis last night. I also kind of had to take a break in between reading that, and the last 20%, I ended up reading a different book, and then I finished Silver Elite. So did it get me all the way interested without me wanting to switch to another book? The answer is no. And in case you're wondering, the book that I picked up and read all the way through was To Sway a Soul by Irene Chow. This was recommended by my friend Tiffany over on Instagram. She's Quill Tree Fox. Make sure you go and follow her. And I thought it was really interesting because it was a cozy fantasy, but it also dealt with the topic of capitalism in terms of art, which definitely was part of the angle that she was talking about as an artist, and it really made me want to read it. So if you haven't picked that up, it is available on Kindle Unlimited and you can check it out. And then I did manage to finish reading Silver Elite by Dani Francis. So, okay, final thoughts. This is not the most original story. It is also not the most well-developed world. I feel like it relies a bit heavily on tropes and cliches, especially cliches. I don't think that there was anything that was the most original in the crafting of this post-apocalyptic world. And the biggest thing is that I feel like in post-apocalyptic dystopian novels, there should always be some kind of a bad guy for a reason. And I feel like we don't really get to see a lot of how this organization, the Silver Elite, that our heroine is trying to basically infiltrate, working with the rebels. We don't really get to see a lot of what they're doing. How are they oppressing society? What is going on with society besides just the fact that, oh, they're hunting these other people that are like our heroine. So I think that there's still too many questions and there's still too many things about the world that I don't think are well developed and well explained. Besides the fact that, yes, the Silver Elite are this oppressive government type entity and they are hunting down people that have these special powers and abilities. And of course, there is an organization that is those people trying to rebel against that power. But other than that, nothing else really was developed besides that. So I think that that for sure is something that was missing in this book and in the world development. And I think that for a first book, it should have had some of that, even if it wasn't gone into with more depth. Now, as far as our main characters, they're likable enough. And as the romance goes, I think that that's also good. I don't think that it's anything earth-shattering. I don't think that either one of them are going to top any best character lists, but they are strong, solid, lovable characters. And for my prediction that I mentioned, there was something that you'll probably kind of immediately pick up on. I was right. And it does get resolved in this book. So you do get to find that out. I almost wanted it to go in a different direction just to give it a little bit more interest. But I guess it was good enough that I was right and it went in that direction. I am interested to see how a second book would develop and go from here. But I don't know if I am interested enough to continue. Like, the book was okay. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. It does read very easily. It does flow. But honestly, I think that it could have been much shorter, and that in and of itself would have made it a stronger book. The pacing would have been better. And there is also one thing that our heroine does that changes the direction and the dynamic and puts her in such danger towards the end of the book that it was such a stupid decision to make. Like, instead of doing something as stupid and dangerous as she did, she could have just had a few more conversations and probably could have figured things out. So it definitely shows a lot of immaturity. So also I think that is something to be said. This is supposed to be an adult dystopian romance, but it felt very much like a young adult story in how the characters were acting. So if you're into young adult stories, then it's probably going to be something that works better for you. But if you were expecting this to be an adult dystopian romance, maybe not so much. So definitely you're going to get some immature characters, at least making some immature decisions. And we do get to hear also a little bit more about why her uncle kind of kept her away from knowing certain things. But even though we're getting that answer of why that was happening, I still disagree with why he did it and how he went about keeping her in the dark about certain things. I think if anything, it made her be in more danger now, especially with the fact that he is not around to guide her through some of these things. So I feel like he should have known that and should have prepared her better for it. Now, besides that, also there were a couple of things that happened action-wise that I think were there just a bit for shock value. I don't think that the setup was there leading up to anything. And I definitely would have liked to see something where it really made sense for the progression of actions and what was happening. So in a way, yes, you're expecting bad things to happen and attacks and all of this stuff, but some of it felt a bit too much like shock value for me, just to make people gasp, and I wasn't gasping, you know? And then lastly, let's touch on the steam. I think that as the book progresses too, some of that steam actually goes down. Even though there are more scenes where they're having sex, the steam actually goes down. So if anything, I would say that this is quite low steam, even though yes, it's not a clean romance, it's not, you know, closed door, but some of the scenes were closed door. I wouldn't say that this is a super steamy romance. Now, all of that being said, I feel like I need to take a half a star off. So I might actually settle on 3 stars for this book. And we'll see when the second book comes out how I feel about continuing on with the series. But with that, we finished the reading vlog for Silver Elite by Dani Francis. Let me know in the comments if you guys have read this book and what you thought of it. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let's have a chat. And also let me know in the comments what other books or what genres you want me to do more reading vlogs on. Now, if you are looking for some more post-apocalyptic dystopian adult romance, I have some recommendations for you guys. I have a bunch on the blog, so I'm going to leave that blog post link down below, but I also have this other video that you can go and check out as well. So if you're ready for some more recommendations to scratch that itch of post-apocalyptic dystopian adult romance, I will see you in this other video.